There's so many question marks around Conor McGregor, but the one thing that we don't have a question mark is Max Holloway knows how to put an insane pace on people, a pace that nobody's ever seen before. I think it is going to be a 400-strike showdown, and it might only take him 2 rounds to get there.
Welcome to First Strike, only on VSiN, the sports betting network. Here's your hosts, Dave Ross and Rob Moreno.
We are back, First Strike here on VSiN. Dave Ross alongside Gumby, Vreeland, Dan Vreeland, back in the program today. Of course, Rob Moreno is going to join us as well to get El Modelo and get his numbers here from UFC Baku. Should be a pretty amazing main event here. Rafael Fiziev taking on Manuel Torres in this main event. Dan, it's great to have you back on, my friend. We love catching up with you. And if memory serves, UFC Baku and you, it seems to, it's a pretty good marriage made, correct?
Yeah, UFC Baku was historically good to me last year. Daily fantasy, all the good stuff. Yeah. I am a huge fan of Baku, Azerbaijan.
And by the way, again, it's one of those time changes. People are going to have to adjust the body clock and get the betting clock in there, get those bets in early here on the stateside before we get to UFC Baku over the weekend. How do you do that, Dan, on the East Coast? What time are you setting your alarms for? Are you getting up for all the prelims?
Oh, first of all, I have kids, so I'm up at 5 a.m. anyway. They have a different internal clock than most human beings do. So a 9 a.m. start time on the East Coast, that is music to my ears.
Oh, it's a piece of cake for you, Dan. You got no problem with that. Okay, you know the question I'm going to ask you before we break into each individual fight that we like in the main card for sure. And that's the favorite fight that you can't wait to watch and your favorite fight that you can't wait to bet.
So the favorite fight to watch, obviously the main event is really exciting. Like I'd be crazy if I didn't mention that Fiziev and Manuel Torres is going to be sick. But on the undercard, Daniil Donchenko versus Theodore Berggren. Daniil Donchenko, first of all, just like an absolute violence monster. The guy comes forward. I mean, like he was bleeding out of his face when he won his last fight and like didn't seem to care. And Berggren, even though he's a late replacement for not Alexander Gustafsson, the other Gustafsson, Andreas Gustafsson.
Correct.
Even though he's a late replacement for him, he's a really exciting kickboxer. He's had a little bit of trouble with his grappling in the past, which I think might be his undoing here. But as long as these two are standing, this is going to be a lot of fun. And then my favorite one to wager on, I love Eric Nolan's spot here as an underdog here against Farman Hassanov.
Wow.
I think Hassanov is just kind of the favorite because he's the local guy. But if you watch Eric Nolan, like first of all, he got a really tough first assignment in fighting Basinger Serserkayev on short notice. I think it was like 3 days notice he had to take that fight. And really, he torched him in the first round. He had really good hands. He hit Serserkayev hard a couple of times. All of his fights in CFFC have had him face planning opponents and looking really good doing it. And Hassanov, if you've seen his stuff for LFA, like maybe not the most adept striker. So as long as Nolan can keep the feet here, plus 150, which is where I see him hovering around, is a great number.
By the way, the under in that fight, 2.5 rounds here, it's juiced heavily to the under at $1.88 is what I'm seeing here as we discussed this on a Wednesday. And you mentioned that number for Noah on the plus side, plus $1.45, $1.50 out there. Shop around for the best dog price here. Do we get this thing inside the distance as the number would allude with that big juice headed to the under?
Yeah, I think if you like the Eric Nolan side, it just absolutely you could play the under as long as you're on that side. I think if you do like Hassanov here, if you're on the opposite side of me, this is a fight that will probably go the distance. Nolan is really tough, even though we got taken out by Serserkayev there. But like, Hassanov, not as much of a finisher as Serserkayev, probably going to have to grind this one out. So if you're with me and you like Nolan, you should like the under as well.
By the way, Dan, I mean, we've said this every time that we have you on the program through the years. You attack some of these fights that are off the beaten path better than anybody that I know in this space. That's why I love these conversations with you. You mentioned Theodore Berggren against Donchenko as a short-term replacement here, quick replacement for Berggren. He is plus 380. The under is plus $1.05 for 7.5 minutes, slightly juiced to the over at $1.35. You mentioned if they stand and trade, it's going to be just one that's fun to watch. Does that tell me we don't see a second round if they do stand and trade?
I think actually with as durable as Donchenko is, there is a chance we go a little bit deeper into it. But I also kind of feel like in this fight, if you're looking for a way to get some value on it and you don't like the dog side, like I don't, perhaps the best way to get at this is the submission prop. So Donchenko, who is not known as a submission guy, if he gets tagged one time here by Berggren, he does have the grappling to bring it to the ground. We saw him do it in the tough finale, and he does have a submission threat as well. So like with only 2 career submissions, but you can get him plus 750 to finish this one by sub. Berggren has shown issues with his grappling defense in the past. I kind of think Donchenko could get it done there.
I like it. All right, very quickly before we get to the main card here, G Matsumoto is going to open up this card. I mean, this is how deep this UFC Baku card is. He's a $1.55 betting favorite. Also on the prelims, we got Nursultan Ruzaboyev is back on this fight card. He's over a $2 betting favorite. So some guys out there maybe going to be fighting a little bit earlier than what we're accustomed to seeing them fight. Out of those two favorites, which one do you think might be in the most danger of being upset?
You know, I think Matsumoto, but I don't think necessarily it has to do with his skill set. Both of these guys are probably two of my favorite parlay pieces, as long as they fight their fight. And with Ruzaboyev, there's less of a problem with worrying about him fight his fight because he's fighting a guy who will stand and trade with him, right? And that's what he wants. He's going to throw the big right hand. He's going to probably knock Pulaev out. But with Matsumoto, he just has a way of like frustrating me with his fighting style, his fight IQ. He just does some dumb stuff sometimes. And Almacan is the type of guy who could take advantage of some of those circumstances, win minutes of that fight, and ultimately like maybe win a really terrible split decision or something like that. So I personally like Matsumoto as long as he fights his style of fight, but you do have to be worried because sometimes he just doesn't do that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way I'm going to play it, Dan, is look to Matsumoto, but in a parlay with Ruzaboyev here as the favorites, try to get that down around even money instead of laying the $1.55 here with Gene, who we do like, but can be very frustrating, certainly from a betting perspective. All right, let's get to this main event because Rafael Fiziev back in there against Manuel Torres. You know, I went back and, watched the Torres destruction of a guy like Grant Dawson, who I really like as a wrestler, and he couldn't get the takedown. And then all of a sudden, you're standing up with Torres, and it did not end well. Well, Fiziev's not going to take anybody down, right? He's going to be standing. We wouldn't think against Manuel Torres. Do we get a Rock'em Sock'em Robots fight? I know it's a main event, potentially 5 rounds, but you see where this total is sitting. And Dan, it's telling us at 1.5 in a main event that this fight's not going to go very long in UFC Baku.
Yeah, I kind of don't think it's going to go very long either. And I actually disagree with you on the Fiziev side. I think we are going to see him shoot takedowns. He shoots more takedowns than I think most people realize when you go back and you look at how many he's whiffed on and how many he's hit in the past. Like the number kind of shocks me and how surprising it is. And especially when he's up against a striker. We saw it against Justin Gaethje. He did want to get to the takedown. I do think ultimately, though, it's probably his undoing in this fight because, as we've seen time and time again with Manuel Torres, if you choose to grapple with Manuel Torres, you kind of wind up in a bad spot, right? You kind of wind up gassing yourself out, getting hit too much. All of those types of things wind up putting you in the worst spot possible. And so for me, I kind of think Fiziev would be in a better circumstance to just stand and trade and go Rock'em Sock'em Robots. I kind of think he gets hit once or twice and feels a little woozy, remembers what happened in the last fight where, he, again, was kind of up against a younger, faster striker and, got knocked out.
Yeah.
I think he might decide that I don't want to do this again. I don't want to get in this circumstance, and it probably digs him an even deeper hole.
That's the intriguing part for me when you're coming off a vicious knockout like the one he suffered. And by the way, I thought he won the first round, and then second round, that the size and the length that we saw, certainly from the Brazilian side, was just way too much for a guy like Fiziev. Now, if we're getting to it, could we get to an over? It is juiced slightly at $1.40, 7.5 minutes to get to that over. If he shoots, to your point here, Dan, in the first round, I'd like that better as an over better to say, hey, we can get some stall time here. Maybe Torres can't flip the script on the ground. We get a stalemate on the ground for at least the first 5 minutes. Is that the only way we get to an over? Is if we do shoot and get a successful takedown, at least maybe we struggle a little bit in the clinch and or on scrambles to elongate this fight a little bit?
I think your point about him winning that first round, I think is a reason to like the over here, right? Because it isn't that he's, getting starched in the first 30 seconds of a fight or, looking like he's completely outmatched from the get-go. It's just that once people have sort of figured out his range, and he is a stockier guy for this division, especially against a guy like Manuel Torres.
Yep.
He is a guy who, takes a second to figure out. He spins, he moves a bunch, and he wastes a lot of energy, especially if he's shooting takedowns and stuff. So I kind of think Manuel Torres over 1.5 is kind of the play, right? Because if Fiziev is going to fall apart in this fight, it is probably not going to be until 7.5 minutes in.
I tend to like that play here. I'm probably going to be on the Torres side with you as well and look to that over 7.5. And again, this isn't Mauricio Hoofy that he's in there against. We understand that, but nobody else is in that division. So very, very different here for Fiziev. So hopefully he can extend this fight a little bit longer on. We got Shara Bullet back in here, and Shara Magomedov is going to be taking on Michel Pereira. And I saw some people saying, who is Michel Pereira these days? What's happened to him? And you're looking at him now. He's a big underdog against Shara Bullet at plus 280. And we know how explosive a guy like Michel can be. And then after a round, Danny, that explosion is not as explosive anymore. Can Shara Bullet weather the storm for 5 minutes, pick him apart on the outside with those kicks in the length? And the longer this fight goes, you think that would favor the favorite here, who's a 355 betting favorite.
Yeah, and I would just say this too. I agree with you on the what is Michel Pereira at this point in time, right? Because on one hand, yeah, I mean, like, he could be a guy in this division who you have to keep an eye out for. And also, he's even worse than Gian Matsumoto in terms of his, what are you doing? Because sometimes it's a backflip off the cage. Sometimes he's grappling really smartly. And actually, I think he would be a favorite in this fight if I could be confident that he would shoot a takedown and try to take this guy's back, right? Because, like, we've seen him do that, right? Was it Olashejuk? He submitted in like a round and a half. And, like, his grappling is really good, especially when you blend it in with the craziness that's happening on the feet. And if he didn't embrace Shara Bullet in a crazy stand-up war, I'd love him to win this fight. I don't trust him to do that, though. I trust him to do a backflip in 3 spinning attacks and then be tired. So, like, in the end of the day, yeah, I'm probably going Shara Bullet here. I don't think I love his value where it currently sits. And it's kind of hard to, like, pencil in what we think is going to happen here, right? Like, even if you wanted, like, the over 1.5, I got to imagine we're not getting a great line on there. Over 2.5, I don't know if I can trust, like, it's just like a really, really bizarre fight because Michel Pereira always brings one.
And that's my thing. I'm looking to that under at 7.5 minutes here for a round and a half. Get upwards of $1.80 to the plus side here if you think it can get finished inside of 7.5 minutes. And ironically, I think that the shorter the fight is, it favors Michel. That you see that chaos and Shara Bullet's confused in the first 5 and maybe, turtles up a little bit and he hasn't a chance to get him out of there. I mean, I'm really stretching it to try to figure out a way to get to the Pereira side here early in a fight. But the longer the fight goes, I don't know how he beats Shara Bullet. No. Right? The longer it goes. And that's why I think that under is right now at minus 235 for over a round and a half. It says Shara Bullet's the guy's going to be more disciplined in the octagon. Let the wild man tire himself out. Then I'll pick him apart in rounds 2 and potentially 3.
Yeah, that's exactly my read too. Like, the longer this fight goes, the worse it'll be for Pereira, which it always is, right? Like, that's why he lost to Tristan Connolly all those years ago.
I'm looking at the return of the King of Kung Fu here, and Nassim Sadakov's back in this matchup here. Mateus Camilo. Right now, Sadakov is minus 238, and the comeback here in Camilo's side is plus $1.95. That total is sitting at 2.5 rounds. It is juiced heavily to the under at $1.66, which shows us finishing potential. How do you see this fight breaking down?
I actually love the dog money on Camilo here. I think he's a guy who I think is being vastly underrated based on his loss to Gabe Green. And I know that loss to Gabe Green, in retrospect, everybody looks back at it. How often is great Gabe Green even fighting? Does that seem like a guy he shouldn't lose to? But, like, watch the fight. He dominates the whole first round with the grappling, beats the hell out of Gabe Green. In the second round, he's dominating with the grappling again, goes to put in his hooks and forgets to put him in as he falls off the top and loses that fight as a result. And, it's really one mistake over, whatever it was, 8 minutes of fight time that cost him that fight. And when you look at Sadakov, I know he's got the OV at the end of his name, so people automatically assume the guy knows how to grapple. But, like, he has had a lot of issues with his grappling in the past. When you watch Terrence McKinney take him down basically at will, in that fight, or, any of his other fights, he's been held against the cage, even all the way back when you look at him in Contender Series, or, Evan Elder got him down. I think there's a real path to Camilo just, like, beating him up on the mat or beating him up against the fence without him being able to circle away or get himself off or dig his underhooks and let his hands go, because that's the type of fight that we know Sadakov wants. And I don't think that it's the fight that Camilo brings. So as long as Camilo doesn't make that mistake, I think there's real money on his underdog line. And I said submission prop before at 750 for Donchenko. 13-1 on Camille. I'm just going to throw it out into the ether.
Wow.
Because I do believe his grappling is really good and Sadikov is overrated in that. 13-1 might be worth a sprinkle.
I like that sprinkle there, Danny. All right, let's talk about another dog. See if I can get you interested in Charles Johnson, the veteran, back in there against the Sue Almabayev. Almabayev is a massive favorite here, minus 258. We know how game a guy like Charles Johnson is now. You got the American go over to Baku. I wonder how that's going to play out first and foremost. Should he be over a $2 betting underdog here?
Yeah, as much as I love Charles Johnson, I mean, I love talking to the guy. I love watching the guy. Like, he's just such a fun fighter.
Absolutely.
On the same token, I have a really tough time picking him against the guy who's as good of a grappler as Asu Almabayev. Almabayev has only really struggled to control fights against Manel Kape, who is arguably maybe the best fighter in the flyweight division.
Agreed.
Right now. You know, we just watched him dismantle Kyoji Horiguchi in like pretty much one of the more violent ways I've ever seen Horiguchi be. So like, for that to be Almabayev's only loss in the grappling dominance against guys who have pretty good grappling defense too. You know, like he out-grappled Alex Perez in that fight before finishing him with a submission. You know, he took Jose Ochoa down 7 times in that fight. You know, he dealt with Mateus Nicolao's grappling. Like, the guy just has really exceptional grappling, and I know Charles Johnson's been able to stay away from it, but I do think the level of grappler that he's been able to stay away from in terms of the grappling, not quite Almabayev. So I do kind of favor Almabayev here. And if you're trying to make it look maybe not so drastic at a negative 250, because, you know, fading Charles Johnson at negative 250 feels kind of wrong all the time.
Right.
You know, it's an over, right? Like, because Almabayev's not going to go in there and submit Charles Johnson, I don't think. So it's like, you just take Almabayev by decision, and it starts to look like a lot more realistic of a line of what you wanted.
Yeah, closer down to a pick 'em, about $1.20. I think you can get that price point down to $1.15, depending on your book. Almabayev by decision feels like the right read there if we're not live on the dog there. Are we live on the Hulk as a dog with Bruno Ferreira back in there against Ikram Aliskerov? And right now you can look at Ikram, and he is, I'm seeing over a $2 betting favorite right now, $3 betting favorite, 305. And on the Hulk, you're coming back on 245 on Ferreira. Bruno, we know how violent he can be in there. But again, I think the cardio is the issue, and that's why this is sitting at 1.5. It is juiced slightly to the under at $1.20. Is it the same deal that if you like the Ferreira side, you look to the under, and if you like Ikram, you might look to the over?
I actually like Ikram on the under too. I personally think Ikram Aliskerov has kind of shocking power. I think people forget how hard this guy can hit sometimes. You know, we saw him finish Muniz. Granted, that was a TKO. But like, go back and watch his finish of Phil Hawes. Like, he has got really, really good power and really good TKOs too. And Ferreira's not used to being the nail on the mat.
Right.
You know, like, when he gets taken down, he's never really been that. And in addition to that, I don't want to say he's got a weak chin, because the people who have knocked him out, Gregory Robocop Rodriguez, you know, the Ruzaboyev, who we just talked about having a pretty big right hand, like, big punchers who have knocked him out in the past, but like, he's been cracked twice pretty violently, and he's gone out in those fights too.
Yes.
So like, you know, that's a cumulative effect, and it wasn't really all that long ago when he got knocked out by Robocop. That was March, right? So we're talking about like 3 months ago, he was knocked out in less than a half a round, right? So Ikram Aliskerov, a guy who's kind of got sneaky power, good TKOs, has the ability to wrestle and deal with the grappling if Ferreira does try to bring it there, because, you know, he's got some subs in his own right. I kind of think Ikram in the under is the play here, or if you want to get real cute, like, because he's not going to go for a submission, the TKO prop is probably right there.
Yeah, you're right about Bruno, man. It's been violent the way it's gone out the last couple of times. It could be a third time here, and maybe that underplay still is money well spent, $1.20 on the under, a round and a half. You know, look back at Abus Magomedov when he came in. I think they threw him in there with Sean Strickland. I mean, think about that when you look back just a couple of years ago. And now the lefty and Mikhail Olajechuk's going to be back in there. This is one of the tighter fight lines that we see on here right now. Magomedov is $1.18. The comeback on Olajechuk is $1.02. And again, 7.5 minutes. It tells you more violence is coming from these sharpshooters here. Is this going to be a fight? And again, Abus, I think the question is cardio. The deeper a fight goes, but the same thing you could say about Olajechuk. Is this going to be 7.5 minutes of violence one way or the other?
You know, I'm not quite sure what goes on here, but I do think that, you know, to your point, Abus, and I'm not even sure it's cardio, actually. I think it might be will. Because he's a guy who I think, you know, when he's been able to just dominate from the early part of the fight, right? obviously it looks great. The Warlley Alves fight. I mean, you could talk about eventually submitting Bruno Ferreira, who we just talked about,
Right.
kind of not being good at being the nail. But the guys he's all beat are guys who kind of wilt in succumb to his will, right? Warlley Alves, who's like, first of all, really small for that division anyway. Bruno Ferreira, we just talked about having a terrible gas tank. Michel Pereira, who fights like a knucklehead. It's like 3 guys he beat right in a row who are all kind of questionable. And then all of the people he's struggled with are people with good willpower who move forward at a good clip. Sean Strickland, Capo Hayo, Joseph Pfeiffer. All of those guys are super good too, right? Like they're all legit top 5 guys, and one of them's the champ right now. But they're also guys who have a toughness about them.
Yeah.
I kind of think Oleksiejczuk matches that, right? Oleksiejczuk is a guy, especially since he's moved to the Fighting Nerds, because despite being Polish, he's a fighting nerd now down in Brazil. Since moving to the team, he's 3-0. He beat the hell out of Cedrikas Dumas, which I don't know what that says. He absolutely torched Gerald Meerschaert, which again, I don't know how much that says. But then the way he went in and just brawled with Marc-Andre Barrios, with powerbar, like he showed that he has that toughness and that ability to come forward. So it totally wouldn't surprise me if Abus comes out here and puts it on him in the first round and looks really dominant doing it. I'm going to be looking at the live line after the first round because that's where I think the real value is going to be had.
Love that. Have a little patience, wait for 5, and that thing gets to that second round. Then maybe get on Oleksiejczuk at that point. Danny, I got to ask you about the big card coming up. And by the way, I want to get your thoughts very quickly. We just had the White House card. I thought it was as good as they could do it, right? And then it's going to bring a lot more eyeballs to the sport. What I love about this card at UFC Baku is for old timers like us that have been around the block, and you get we're really intrigued about these fights. The casuals probably not. And this is not a knock on you if you're new to First Strike, if you're new to UFC. This is not a knock, but we understand that this fight card, while it's sexy to people like you and me, might not be to the masses. Then we go back to Conor McGregor against Max Holloway, and boom, here comes everybody else into a fight like that for obvious reasons, name recognition, history of the sport, all that stuff. How are you sizing that up? Because when the numbers came out, I felt like, what am I missing? I got to back Conor despite the layoff at how big he looks, and we've seen Max sometimes be physically overmatched. And then as we've gotten closer, the money has come in on Conor. The numbers have come down. I'm almost wondering, is it a price point play now on Max that we could look at and go, ooh, he might just be able to piece up Conor. And now that the numbers come down, it seems a little bit more advantageous.
Yeah, I think that, and I think the under is really in play. I think the possibility of him getting Conor McGregor out of there is really high. We mentioned the layoff. We mentioned, the fact that he's been beat up. Is his head in the game? There's so many, question marks around Conor McGregor. But the one thing that we don't have a question mark is Max Holloway knows how to put an insane pace on people, a pace that nobody's ever seen before. And now you're telling him he barely has to cut weight. You're going to tell him that he can basically come in at his walk around weight and put one of the most impressive cardio fights that you've ever seen together. I think this fight will wind up at the end of the day looking like Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar. I think it is going to be a 400 strike showdown, and it might only take him 2 rounds to get there. I think he's going to put a pace on Conor that Conor is definitely not ready for. And especially like a bulked up Conor too. If you put a pace on him, what's his cardio going to look like 7 minutes into that fight? I can't imagine it looks great.
So funny because, we're going to have Rob Moreno on here. Rob knows when this fight came out, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get Conor McGregor at over a $3 betting underdog. And now as the months have gone on and I've seen this number come down and I'm going, oh, I only have to lay 236. The price point makes everything. I might end up, I haven't picked it yet, but I might end up on the Max side. And I'm picking up what you're putting down, Dan. Great stuff as always. Tell everybody, because I always like to say you're the hardest working man in MMA. Tell everybody where they can access all your incredible material.
Sure. You can check out all my podcasts. So I do the SGPN MMA podcast. You can see that on YouTube. It's just SGPN MMA Gambling Podcast. And we cover not just the UFC, but this week we're doing Cage Warriors and CFFC and LFA, and we pretty much hit every single promotion. So if you're looking to get in on some of those less known cards, you can check it out there. I also run the Top Turtle MMA podcast. We got interviews with fighters. We got Julius Walker and Shannon Clark on this week. And then also, all my writing, I do interview articles on Cage Side Press, and I also do gambling articles about MMA and the World Cup. We got World Cup stuff going on right now over at sportsgamblingpodcast.com.
Yeah, you're the best. And you should check out all those areas because, Dan, your stuff is absolutely spectacular. And I think the first upset on this conversation today is that my beard was longer than yours. That was a big plus money if you had that one. I'm going to get mine cut. Dan, you're the best, man. We appreciate it. We'll catch up again soon. There he is, everybody. Dan Vreeland. Come on back. We've got Rob Moreno, El Modelo next right here. First Strike on VSiN.
You're tuned in to First Strike, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We continue First Strike here on VSiN. Dave Ross and Rob Moreno. El Modelo back in the house. My man, great to see you once again this week. We know that there's a lot of things going on in the network right now. There's some great offers, including our NFL betting guide. We're going to have some fun with that here before we say goodbye in this edition of First Strike. But $9.99 is an intro offer. You'll have access to that NFL betting guide, all of our picks every week, daily baseball picks, you name it. And also, if you want a longer subscription, $175 covers you through the Super Bowl of next year with this intro offer. So, Rob, really good stuff out there. And again, we wouldn't be pushing this and telling you, if you want to bet smarter, you need to be a VSiN Pro subscriber.
Absolutely. And the guide is not available a la carte. So you got to be a subscriber to get the guide, find the price point that makes sense for you. But you got to check out the guide. The boys put in a lot of work, you as well. Great stuff in there. Great stuff in there. I actually really like your play on the over on the Dolphins, by the way.
Go over 4.5. Let's go, baby. That's a freebie for everybody watching, listening on First Strike.
That's it. That's all you get. That's all you get.
Great conversation as always with Dan Gumby Vreeland in the last segment. We were talking about that main event, of course, with Rafael Fiziev against Manuel Torres, UFC Baku. You got to get up early, depending on where you are in the country here on a Saturday morning. But this fight card's really good. And again, we're coming on the heels of last week, maybe a card that we liked and we nailed with Manuel getting that done in the main event last week. Back there at UFC Apex, coming on the heels of the White House card. This card really is really sneaky deep and really good for people that are invested in the company and in the fight game like we are. But that main event, that total sitting at 1.5, and I'm wondering what the numbers are showing you, because Fiziev's a guy I normally don't want to fade. I find myself leaning towards the Torres side at a really small price point.
So Fiziev is a guy, man, I've been on the wrong side before, but I've been on the right side as well. It's interesting because he kind of needs this win, right? I know his recent losses are to absolute monsters in the divisions. I mean, there's no shame in losing to especially looking back, 2 losses to Justin Gaethje, Mauricio Hufi recently. He had the leg injury against Matisse Gamrot, but right. Looking back, he's 1-4 in his last 5, just the victory against Ignacio Bahamondes. So this feels like a must win for his situation as far as like sticking around in the rankings. UFC did their new rankings and I checked out their meta rankings. Rafael Fiziev drops out of the top 15 in the new version of their rankings. I don't know what their metrics are, but 1-4 doesn't help. That's for sure. And Fiziev, the thing with Manuel Torres is he is a tough dude. I mean, you're talking about a guy, he has 1 decision in his entire MMA career. Everything else is first rounds, most of them victories, but he does have first round losses as well. So, and we've seen other UFC fighters that way. They kind of bang or bust. And yes, every UFC fight he's had has been a first round finish, including his only loss. XR percentage for Fiziev, unfortunately, it's ticking down, right? It's down at 47% right now. But the fights he's been in has kind of produced that number, right? I mean, you go I believe they were main events. So you go 2 5-round fights with Justin Gaethje where you're getting your face beat up, your XR percentage is going to drop, right? And his striking metrics kind of reflect that. So he lands 4.71 significant strikes per minute, but he has a negative differential. So he's eating 4.84 per minute. And that's a dangerous game against a striker like Manuel Torres, who, by the way, both these guys spend 80+% at distance, so this is a striking match. But there is some sneaky grappling, as you mentioned, with Gumby. But Manuel, back to the striking. His output is 6.69 significant strikes per minute with a positive 2.36 differential. So he actually dishes way more than Rafael, and he's absorbing a tick less than Rafael. He's got a reach advantage. It's all kind of there. He's got power as well, obviously. I mean, you're talking about 4 knockdowns in just 6 UFC fights, I think. In the wrestling department, at first, I totally saw what you saw in Fiziev. Not a big grappling guy. I mean, 44% control rate, even 50% only for Manuel. Both of them have 90% takedown defense. But Rafael Fiziev, in his last victory against Ignacio Bahamondes, he took him down 4 times, and that was part of the reason he won. And I remember that because part of my analysis at the time was Fiziev, his only path to victory is if he takes him down, and he only has 4 takedowns at the moment. He doubled his takedowns in that one fight, and it worked for him. Now, Manuel, I'm glad Gumby hit on it, but I think his takedown defense should be sharp enough to force Rafael to struggle here. And when I run the numbers, it falls on Manuel Torres when he was a dog. I haven't run it as him being not that he's a favorite, but
Right.
the numbers obviously have moved around. I mean, this morning he's minus 105. I did see him minus 110 yesterday. I was able to get him plus 100. He still was at circa yesterday. I'm not sure this morning, but so as a live dog, I took him at plus 100. I think there's a path there. I mean, I know Fiziev is kind of, he's going to have kind of a home crowd situation going for him.
Sure.
But I don't know if that bothers Manuel, especially for a guy who doesn't really bother himself with the judges' scorecards.
No, he doesn't. I lean towards the Torres side. It's not an official play for me. I'm seeing $1.05 that I can grab. Got to lay $1.05 here. I don't see that even money out there, the number you got, which is really good. But I do think still inside that playable price point here, obviously with the 5 cents difference here. And look, I love Fiziev. I love his fighting spirit. I just wonder if some of that's been taken out in those losses to Gaethje, right? Taken out a little bit against Mauricio Hoofi in the nature of those knockouts. And I do wonder, Rob, at some point, like if you're up there and we know the way Torres is going to come out there aggressive. If you're like, man, here we go again, right? I keep getting in here with these killers. And maybe they're not Torres isn't a household killer like Gaethje and Hoofi is becoming, but yet still, maybe for everybody else out there, he's going to know quickly that this is another bull that's coming at him. So he better wrestle, I think is the point. Maybe he watched First Strike before the Bomb Mondays fight, and he saw your numbers and said, you know what, I got to listen to Rob Moreno, and I better wrestle because if I don't, I'm going to get knocked out. And that's what's happening. So to me, if I lean towards the over 1.5, which I do, that would incorporate that wrestling, that at least he's attempting the takedowns. Even if he doesn't get it, maybe we're burning clock up against the cage side here in a scramble situation here, and Torres is fighting off the takedown, and we're running clock. And then if he gets a takedown, I don't know that Fiziev has got a big advantage on the ground either, as Gumby was saying, but that could be good for a stalemate if they get on the ground and all of a sudden they're struggling for position and both guys are about equal on the ground. That gets the clock ticking too. So I'm going to be holding my breath that it's not a firefight for the first 5 minutes here. And then hopefully I think Torres eventually later stages of the second, if not the third, might be able to get Fiziev out of there. And that's kind of been the trend lately with Fiziev. The longer it's been going, it has not been great for him either. Even though Torres gets stuff done early, hold your water for 5, get in that second round, get past 2.5 minutes there, Rob, we might be able to cash both tickets.
I like that. I mean, you're right. Fiziev, if he implements that similar game plan, whether it's successful or not, you just need him to implement the game plan.
That's it.
And of course, with a guy who finishes his fights in the first round, you're going to want to test that theory early before he gets you out of there. So as you said, you're hoping Fiziev at least attempts a couple takedowns, which, hey, that just burns the clock, right? Hopefully he just pushes him up against the fence and there's a little bit of time just wasted and you're just staring at that clock and you just want to hear the snap of the 10 seconds and you're like, there we go. First round out of the way. Let's burn 230 in the next one. But I think that can be live as long as Fiziev doesn't get into that early firefight, obviously.
If I get on a plane over there to UFC Baku, I'd just yell in the first round, "What's the rush?" Slow it down. Take your time, boys. We got 5 rounds if we need them. What's the model showing you here with Asu Almabayev against Charles Johnson? Talked about this obviously with Gumby. I don't like to fade Charles Johnson. 1, because I like him. 2, he's very, I'd say competitive. Win, lose, or draw. This is normally not a guy that you're going to push around inside that octagon. He's normally there for 15. Is he a live dog via the numbers, or is Almabayev the right side here?
So you're right. I think most people are a fan of Charles Johnson. Here's a guy he's got fun in the cage, right? He's a fun guy to watch. He's got a spark to him, and he has flashes of a great fighter in there. But I don't know if this is the right recipe for him. He does have a 5-inch reach advantage, which helps his striking metrics, right? He's 4.77 significant strikes landed per minute, 0.75 differential, so he only absorbs 4. The issue is, and kind of going to that XR percentage, is he's kind of bang or bust. He's got a 52% XR percentage. And you can see in his record, the decision fights are kind of what he ends up losing. Fights that if he can't get this fight out of there quickly, he ends up losing. It's almost like he can't figure out how to win every single 5 minutes that he's in the cage. Almabayev, very low striking. It's not his game plan. 2.31 significant strikes landed per minute, but 0.32 differential. He's only absorbing 1.99 per minute. And against a guy like Johnson, who's got some sneaky power, that's how you survive that, right? And if you're not going to land strikes, what are you going to do? And Almabayev's going to look to grapple. I mean, he's got an 89% control rate on the ground and clinch time. 47% of his ground time is in a controlling position as well. 27 takedowns, only 43% takedown accuracy, but he's attempting about 7 takedowns per 5 minutes. So he's going to be aggressive. And Gumby talked about it. Charles Johnson does have respectable takedown defense, 69%, but it's against not superior grapplers, just like Gumby said it. I looked through his stats on his past fights to see when he's been taken down, and it's really just 2 guys who have just completely controlled him, by the way. It is Cody Durden took him down 11 times in one fight.
Extraordinaire. Yep.
And then, I lost it. Sorry. Hold on. I'll find it. And then he was taken down 12 times by Muhammad Mokaev. Right.
I mean, elite guys.
So if an elite guy can grab him, it shows they dictate the fight altogether. Charles Johnson has a shot, of course, at all times, and I don't like the odds, but I'm finding a way to put Almabayev on my card, most likely by decision is probably the easiest way, or a nice parlay anchor, as this card does have all their options there.
Yeah, you're going to be aligned with Gumby, and I think aligned with me again. This is Charles Johnson. We love you, but it's, one of those Paul Sorvino fights, as I say. Now I got to turn my back on you, because the numbers show that against elite grapplers, as you pointed out there with Mokaev, and certainly with a guy like Cody Durden, not a great striker, Cody, but a really good grappler. That's where Charles is struggle. You would think Almabayev would implement that game plan as well. All right, we mentioned the NFL betting guide is out right now. So again, if you're not a VSiN Pro subscriber, you should be by now. You're going to see all of our picks out there. You did something fun this week for the show, where I believe you ran this by AI, and your favorite football teams out there, if there were a fighter, has the computer spit out some data that might analyze what fighter might fit the profile of a football team.
Some people might feel disrespected depending on their favorite football team.
I love that.
We'll see what happens though. I'll start this off, but I have the New York Jets, famed, team there. Yeah. Patty Pimblett gets put as the equal.
I'm offended, and I'm a Jets fan.
Let me tell you the rationale. It says a massive fan base, enormous hype, solid enough, but will always continue to lose the big ones. Everyone talks about them more than they probably deserve, it says.
Oh, AI, I am disrespected for the Patty Pimblett side, not for the Jets. Patty should never be associated with the football Jets. He's way better than the Jets. AI's got that one stone cold wrong. Patty Pimblett went 5 hard rounds with Justin Gaethje, and we saw Ilya Topuria. We were all putting in the Hall of Fame. He still might get there. Couldn't even get off the stool after the 4th. Not disrespecting Topuria, but pointing out that Pimblett was tough enough. Scousers don't get knocked out. The Jets get knocked out all the time, Rob Moreno. AI, you're wrong. Patty Pimblett is way above the New York Football Jets.
All right, so we're 0 for 1.
0 for 1.
Here we go. The Cincinnati Bengals.
Ooh.
Sean O'Malley.
Wow.
So, flashy, stylish, impossible not to watch, burst onto the scene with big moments, and they keep finding ways to stay relevant when the hype begins to fade. The ceiling is legitimately elite. Do you agree?
I think they got it right. I think they got it right. And I think this is good for both the Bengals and for the Sugar Show.
Yes.
Because you're right. It felt like the Sugar Show, not to say popularity, but the hype train was slowing down, right? All of a sudden, and we go, well, is Sean O'Malley still this elite guy? And it took the White House card to remind some people out there, and Sugar envisioned it, what he's going to do, the salute, and he did all of that. That does feel like Joe Burrow, right? And Joe has been that close to a championship. I know Sean has won a title, but that close against the Rams, right? So I think it's a really good comparison. I think that that's like a positive. I think if you're Sean O'Malley and you're watching this, you're going, yeah, that's a good comp. And if you're Joe Burrow and the Bengals, you're going, yeah, I like that comp too, because that guy was champion. I know he fell, but now maybe he's back ascending again. Maybe the Bengals fell, got injured, back ascending again this year. I like that one. I think it works for both parties.
All right, we're 1-1 here. This one's interesting. The Pittsburgh Steelers, Valentina Shevchenko. The reason, an institution, an era, everyone keeps waiting for the decline, but it hasn't quite come. Now, obviously, not that they've been winning championships, but we talk about it all the time. If you're an NFL bettor, you know this. I don't know if you know, Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record.
I've heard that once or twice.
And the legend outlasts all logic, it says. Do you agree?
I tend to agree. We'll see what Big Mike McCarthy can do in year number 1 now, taking over for the other Mike. Here's why I like the comp, is that the history of the Steelers might predate the current resume, but it's still very good resume. But the history of Valentina Shevchenko, I think you can make the case as, I know some would even make the case that she's the GOAT of women's MMA. It's hard to do that when you fought Nunes and, you know,
and you
saw
didn't
what
beat
happened.
the other GOAT.
Right. You didn't beat the other GOAT. I know she was undersized in those fights, technically maybe a little bit out of weight when she had a fighter at 35 before they even had the 25s and the 15s and that sort of things. Right. So I think it's fair to make those logical conclusions that in her weight class, clearly 15-25, and she was really good at 35 too, that it really didn't matter wherever you put her. She's just one of the greatest of all time. I think the Steelers' resume as an organization, take out necessarily present day. I think you could put the Steeler resume with anybody else's. Is it the best? Maybe not. But like Shevchenko, it's one that you could put in the discussion for some of the very best of all time. AI, I'm with you on the bullet one. I think that works.
There we go. 2-1. 2-1, baby. All right, this one's interesting, but it could kind of fit. The Kansas City Chiefs, Alex Pereira. Actually, I'm sorry. Alexander Pantoja. I misread my lines. Alexander Pantoja suffered a serious injury, the greatest of their era. Everyone's watching in real time, wondering what they have left.
Okay, I don't like it. I love it. I think it's so spot on with Mahomes coming, you know, the injury last year, and you know, we see videos of Patrick playing golf, so everybody's like ready to run to the window and bet the Chiefs. And I get it. If you want to bet, you know, Mahomes, I could talk you into much worse bets than betting Patrick Mahomes to rebound. I can't wait for Pantoja's comeback. Kind of, I think, in the same illumination of we can't wait to see what Mahomes can do in the comeback. And I am with AI. And I think the astute observation, which gets lost by casuals out there, that he really might be Demetrius Johnson. It's so hard to ever say somebody's better than Mighty Mouse. Pantoja's that good, man. Like, he's that good. And the Joshua Van fluke, it is a fluke. Now, I know Joshua Van has come back and said what he has to say. Oh, I caused that injury. That's a fluke. I thought Pantoja was going to work, and we'll find out when he's healthy. But yeah, a la Mahomes, I think that's a pretty good comp.
Okay, perfect. I think we're 3-1 now, so we're looking good. We're looking good.
The Jets pick with Patty Pinwell was terrible. AI, terrible.
I had to start with that one. All right, here we go. The Los Angeles Chargers, Armin Sarukian.
Ooh,
check it out. By every metric, one of the better teams in a division, but they get passed over, and the Chargers have been living with that disrespect for years and overlooked, and also may never get a shot at actually getting that up there.
I'm going to give this one, if I had to give it a grade, it would be a passing grade, but maybe a C-.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm going to say that is, like, I like the Harbaugh coaching tree. I like Jim Harbaugh. I know he's an odd duck. And I think Sarukian is looked at kind of like Harbaugh, and that some people, I don't know how many people really like Armin Sarukian, but I think there are people that like me that like the Harbaughs and that they like the coaching tree, and maybe some of the, drinks the milk and eats the red meat and the steak and all that stuff. It's some people it doesn't play for them and others it does. I feel like Sarukian, I hate to say it, I think Armin's disliked by the general public, that he's, and I think that that's why I'm going to give it a C-, because I don't know that the comp to the Harbaughs and the Chargers, I don't know how many people dislike the Chargers. I don't dislike the Chargers, and I think there is some actual dislike from Sarukian, because the Chargers have been, now they're nomads after leaving San Diego, that it's hard to dislike a team when you feel like they've been displaced. So I think they almost get a benefit of the doubt. They're the second fiddle in LA. They just don't get talked about a lot. So maybe that's a good comparison for Sarukian. But I think when people talk about Armin, it's not always in the positive light.
I'll agree with that with you. I also lived in San Diego, and I grew up a Chargers fan.
Yeah.
And I understood the, kind of like second fiddle type thing. And, let's face it, Sarukian's kind of trying to get that title shot back that he kind of passed over, and I don't know if he'll get it. But I do feel you're right. Like, Sarukian's not very liked in outside
like the
circles.
Chargers.
Well, what's not to like, right?
Yeah,
Justin Herbert, the Powder
Great
Blues.
uniforms.
Yeah, come on.
Wonderful cheerleaders. I digress.
All right, let's move to the NFC now. Enough with the AFC. The Chicago Bears. Mauricio Hufi.
Whoa.
All right. Young phenom. Looks electric, especially early on. Hands down, walks forward, gets finishes. They've handled big-name vets before, and the arrow is up.
Sorry, AI. I'm not picking up what you're putting down there. Mauricio Hufi has got real substance to be potentially the best in his division. The Bears? Oh, I see a lot of smoke and mirrors. I see a lot of magician stuff being pulled, and maybe all of a sudden I'm going to see the big reveal and realize they're not as good as they showed last year. That is one of the luckiest football teams I've ever seen a year ago in the Chicago Bears. I don't think there's luck with Mauricio Hufi. So, Rob, I'm disagreeing with AI on that one. I think Hufi is for real. Bears, you got a lot to prove to me this year.
I won't tell Jordan you said any of Jordan Sherwood when he comes back. I'm going to have to send him this clip. All right, let's blast through these last few. These last few are kind of fun.
Okay.
The New Orleans Saints. Kayla Harrison.
Whoa.
Now, not championship reasons. They're the unquestioned ruler of a weak division. It says everyone around them is a mess. The South is bad enough that the Saints can just stumble into the division winning. But you're a Falcons guy this year, so
yeah, I'm at odds in AI in this one too. I love the Dirty Birds down south. Do not like the comp with Kayla Harrison. Nobody wants to fight Kayla Harrison. Everybody wants to play the Saints. Nobody's scared of the Saints. We're scared of Kayla. We're not scared of New Orleans.
I have to agree with that one. As someone who was a Survivor contestant last year, the Saints were a targeted material all year.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'm going to do two more. The Seahawks, Super Bowl champions, Justin Gaethje, won the Super Bowl when nobody was giving them a chance. Gaethje did the same thing at the White House. Gritty, resilient, weathered the storms, and now they're the hunted ones.
Pretty good, AI. I give him some props on that one. Yeah, because again, Sam Darnold and Justin Gaethje, I think you can make a lot of similarities between those two. I've been betting on Sam Darnold a lot. I've been betting on Justin Gaethje a lot. We cash a lot of big tickets on those dog prices. So I think they nailed that one. Now let's see the staying power. I've heard a lot of people say that Justin Gaethje should retire now. I don't know that I'm in that school of thought there. We know Sam Darnold's not retiring, just got a new big deal here in Seattle. I think we're going to see more of Sam Darnold, and I think we'll see more of Justin Gaethje at the top.
Beautiful. Love it. And the last one, my friend, Dallas Cowboys chose your America's team, as you say, for last.
Let's go.
Now, I ran this before the recent news, so I apologize for anyone who gets upset about this.
Oh, no.
Dustin Poirier. Everybody roots for them. They always show up for the big moments, and somehow it ends in disappointment. And now the offseason is getting in the way as well.
I hate to say it, it's kind of spot on. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. That could have been Gaethje had he lost, because he'd never been the outright champ, been interim champ. And it feels like that's what we're talking about with Poirier. Look, you're right. This was before we got the news. Not good news on Dustin post-career retirement and all these things. I'd like a better comp here, but we've had some trip-ups in our past in the offseason like Poirier is having right now. Begrudgingly, I'll agree with AI a little bit on this one. But let's flip the script this year, Dallas. Let's not be Dustin the Diamond Poirier. And by the way, I'm rooting for the Diamond. I'm rooting for him to get his life together because in all seriousness, you hate to see that. And he's such a likable guy. I've talked to him. And Rob, we don't want anybody to go out post-career like that. Kind of tough to watch. But I'm hoping, and he sounds like he wants to get his life in order. I wouldn't mind seeing him coming out of retirement if that's what it's going to take to keep him on the straight and narrow.
Absolutely. I wanted to say the same thing. I mean, we joke and everything, and I thought it was funny because I ran this, like, I'm sure that it had happened, I think, at the time, but the news hadn't really broken out. And I know the AI doesn't know that, but I was like, I'm going to go for it anyways. But yes, we hope the best for Dustin Poirier. Hope he, I think I think we see it a lot in athletes, right? When they step away, it's kind of hard to where to put that energy and that competition and that fire that's inside their belly. And the Diamond's one of the best with that fire. So
I thought you were going to give me John Jones, the best champion of all time, but flawed. Like the Cowboys, the past. You can make the argument.
That's a good one too, actually.
Right?
That's a pretty good one too.
But occasionally we show up for the wrong reasons, right? We'll leave it at that with John Jones and Dustin Poirier. That's great stuff, Rob. That really is fun. And again, shameless plug for us here at the network. But again, not just for us at First Strike, but across the board. You should be a VSiN Pro subscriber right now. If you're taking this seriously in the betting markets, we're going to help you not just in football, but every step of the way, no matter what sport you want to bet. So intro offer $9.99 for your first month, $175 here for the year to take you through the Super Bowl in February. Rob, I know we'll be texting early at UFC Baku on Saturday morning. Before Gumby Vreeland and for Rob Moreno, I'm Dave Ross. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and tell your friends about it. It's First Strike here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.